Today's assignment is going to be looking at applying our knowledge and our vocabulary of like alternate interior angles and vertical angles and all that good stuff, and putting some of those vocabularies into a more complex situation that we have here going on. So the good news is the fundamental information that you know and have your notes on is going to be very useful here. And it looks more intimidating, but really, again, the basics still exist. So an important concept when you're looking at this is we say, okay, well, here are our parallel lines. And so technically we have one transversal and two transversal lines cutting through our parallel lines. So all rules that apply with any set of parallel lines in a transversal exist here and exist here. So to kind of show you a little bit more exactly what we're talking about is that we have one set of our parallel lines and this is what we're going to be working with the knowledge of parallel lines, transversal angles. Now if you notice up here I have A and B because that's technically where that other transversal cuts through. So what operation do you think you could do to A and B if this is 110 degrees here? What type of angles are these? Is this one here and this one here? Well, those are called corresponding. So A plus B must equal 110. Or 110 minus A would give you B. 110 minus B would give you A. So the same concept kind of goes here too. And these are vertical angles with each other. And so E and F added together is going to equal the same thing as A and B added together, which all equal 110. Because these are alternate interior angles. Okay. So let's look at our other one. Our other transversal that we have going on is this guy over here. And so he kind of shifts things up, but some of this is really good if it overlaps. So here we have a 60 degrees, the J and KL. And now this is cut a different way. Now the sum of B and C are added together. And D and E must add together. And whatever they add together has to be equal to J or K because of either alternate interiors, alternate exteriors. You could have corresponding, all that good stuff. Vertical here. So there's several different ways that you can actually go about this. For one, if you notice, this is a linear pair. And every linear pair has 180 degrees. This is a linear pair. So that adds up to 180 degrees. So right here, we could figure out angles J, K, and L. So I'm just going to put my letters down over here. So I have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and L. So I'm going to go 60 to L. And you are welcome to put down because they're vertical angles. Okay? This is a good way to practice your two column. Is basically saying angle L has to equal 60 degrees because they're vertical angles. So K is going to equal, well, 180 minus 60, which equals 120. And sometimes I like to write them up over here because that helps. Get those. Actually, let's do one thing here first. I think will make things a lot easier for this entire process. So I was working on technology and efficiency with the iPad. Okay. So A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, L. And nope, got a little carried away. Okay. So we said that L had to be 60 degrees because they are vertical angles. We also know that K was 180 minus 60 because these are a linear pair. And so that means K is 120. Okay. So if K is 120, that means J is also going to be 120 because it is a vertical pair with K. Right? So we have 60 over here, we have 120 here, and 120 here. So now there's obviously multiple ways that we could start figuring out these other angles. Let's start with at least F and A. So we could we'll do this one of, how about a same alternate interior angle. So that means F has to be equal to 60 degrees because it is an alternate interior angle to my angle there. Or we could say A is 60 degrees. Well, because of alternate exterior angles. Multiple options. You could have also said vertical. You could also say corresponding. All those answers would be absolutely correct. I'm just going to go with alternate exterior angles. So A is alternate exterior angle. Right? So we at least now know that B plus C, these two combined, are going to equal 120 degrees. And we know that D and E added together has to equal 20 degrees. So we've kind of maxed out most of our information that we can do on this one here. So let's see about our other. Remember we had our first layer. So remember this was our first layer here. But let's put in the numbers that we know. Okay. So we have all of these here. And we know this much here. We know at least that angle A is 60 degrees. Okay? Well, cool. Well, if angle A is 60, we know A and B have to add up to 110. Then B has to be 50. So we use our knowledge from the previous one. We figured out what A was. We know that this is 110. A plus B has to equal that. So B has to be 50 degrees. So we also know that B and E are vertical angles. So E has to be 50 degrees because of vertical angles. And what we should have is we have 60 and 50 here, 50 and 60 here, which are both 110. So that's perfect. It's what we want, because they all should have the same value as this. Alright, so now let's start looking at some of these other ones. So we have I, and well, if this is 110, then I has to be 110 because it's vertical with that one. And again, there's multiple ways to do this. If this is 110 and we know that H and 10, then H is going to have to be 70 degrees because it's a linear pair. It means it forms a line. So there's 180 degrees in a line, so H has to equal 70. If H is 70, well then that means G is 70 because it's a vertical pair with H. Now we can use corresponding angles. G and C are corresponding angles. D and 70 are corresponding angles. Could you also do alternate exterior angle here? Yes, you could. Alternate interior angle here? Yes, you could. That's perfectly acceptable. I just want to use corresponding. So D is going to be 70 because of corresponding. And I'm going to do G and C are congruent because of corresponding. So with B, just to kind of clarify how it can come to this one, this is actually be called part of our angle sum conjecture. So this basically says that if this angle and this angle add up to equal 110, then any one angle subtracted from it gives you the other one. So this is called an angle sum conjecture. Right? So there we go. We now have all of our angles and found all of our pieces. This here actually is a 2-column proof. And I think I am going to have you do that on your worksheet. I want you to be able to state which vocabulary words you use to be able to figure that out. Were they linear pairs? Were they vertical? Alternate interior? Corresponding? If you happen to have used, you could have done also same side interior in terms of to find D would have been one way to be able to do D was also same side interior. Going well, that has to add up to 180, and so D has to be 70 degrees. So feel free to go back to the video if you have any questions or rewatch it as many times as you want. Please remember, it's basically looking at this as if it has one set, two sets, and you can break it off. If you need to redraw them, you can even redraw them so they don't have that other line, and focus on what you can first and then put it back together. So let's look at your problem sets. Okay, so this is going to be your work that I want you to do. If you notice, I have my parallel lines cut by transversals. Okay, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N. And so we have 4 problems. This one here, I'm going to let you create. So what you're going to be looking at is like, okay, on number 1, if G is 120 and K is 70, how can you find all the missing angles? So go back over this example, and you can pause this video here to get your problems done, but you can go back over it and watch the process if need be. But it's very similar to the one that we just did. Okay, so find all the missing angles and state your reason. So I do want to have you put down where you're doing vertical, alternate interior. That vocabulary is essential. Number 2, let's say B was 65 and D is 80. So one little also trick you can do and note is, for one, you do have a straight line here. And so that has to add up to 180 degrees. And this again be like your angle pair, your angle sum conjectures. That if D is 80, B is 60, DAB altogether add up to equal 180. How much is A? So that's one way that you can do it. Okay, there's a couple difference in terms of complementaries. Look at it and process. So number 3 says F is 50, J is 140. Can you find the other angles based off of that information? On number 4, I want you to make it work, is what I want you to do. Remember, I want you to pick some numbers that you can start plugging in. And if you want to, start just in one spot and just kind of fill it out and start going. But it all should mathematically work out. These should be supplementary angles. Okay? B and A added together should give you G, because they're corresponding angles. Okay? F and E should be basically the flip version of A and B, because these are vertical here. And the same thing down here. K should be congruent to A. L should equal the same thing as B and C do, etc., etc. So this one here, feel free to pick your own numbers. This also comes in angle checking. Remember, F is an acute angle, C is an acute angle, D, okay, G is an obtuse angle. So these are going to be your problem sets to work through and create.